If you grew up in this country, you heard the stories of the old robber barons from the 19th century who crushed the aspirations of ordinary people. Rockefeller, Standard Oil, Carnegie, U.S. Steel, all the rest of them. Their companies were massive and powerful, and at the time, they seemed to bend the entire country to their will. But that's over, or is it? Today, Amazon, Google, and Facebook, also Apple, aren't just richer and more powerful than the old monopolies or any companies that have ever existed throughout human history. They also have far more control over our daily lives. What should we do about it? Scott Galloway is professor of marketing at NYU's Stern School of Business. He just wrote a great piece for Esquire calling for the breakup of the tech titans' biggest companies. Scott Galloway joins us tonight. Scott, thanks for coming on.
Tucker, thanks for having me.
So you took a forensic look at these companies and their effect on the American economy and American life, and your conclusion was break them up?
That's correct. Yeah, I think we're at a part of the economic cycle where the economy needs to be oxygenated again. I don't think they've done anything wrong, if you will. I just think the economy of innovation that we've become dependent upon has gotten to a point where small companies have difficulty getting out of the crib and big companies are being euthanized before they should, because these companies basically choke off capital, and it's effectively can engage in anti-competitive behavior, which any company does when it's given the assets and the scale of these companies. So I think it's time.
We've got a whole lot of laws against that, federal laws. But Google, for example, which has a chokehold on basically all human information, everything you could know is on Google, and they have, in effect, a monopoly on search. That seems like too much power for any organization to have. They've got to misuse it. Why hasn't Congress done anything to reduce that power and the threat to the rest of us?
Well, that's the correct question. Google, 92% of a market that by dollar volume is bigger than the entire advertising market of any nation, and with the exception of the U.S., and it'll probably blow by the ad market of the U.S. just in 2 years. Basically because current antitrust law is based on the premise that if it's good for the consumer, then it's good for society. And that's what we're wrestling with right now, because most people would have a difficult time arguing that Google isn't good for the consumer. The problem is we don't know what we don't know, and that is we don't know what companies would have emerged if we didn't have a duopoly where 2/3 of all digital spend go to Facebook or Google, and that's 104% of all growth. So if you work in digital marketing and you don't work for one of the two, you join magazines and newspapers, and that you're in a business that's in structural decline.
So that essentially means that between Facebook and Google, all digital news is really controlled. The purse strings are controlled by two companies. I mean, that's not a threatening concentration of power?
I believe it is a threatening concentration of power. I believe that if Fox or News Corp had been weaponized by an intelligence arm of the Russian government, they would have incurred huge fines and advertisers would have abandoned the network. But in the case of Facebook, you have two companies that control almost all traffic and all e-commerce and your presence on the web. So if it's not a monopoly, it's a monopsony. And advertisers have no choice. So there is too much power in the hands of these companies. I don't think they're evil. I don't think they've done anything wrong. I think they do what companies are supposed to do. They're growing their earnings. But I think at some point referees need to step in, throw a yellow flag. And I believe these companies would be better for the economy, broader tax base, more jobs, maybe fewer billionaires but more millionaires if there were 11 or 12 companies instead of the 4 we're discussing here today.
Yeah. I don't think there's a serious conversation about that on Capitol Hill right now, but I hope you spark one. Scott, thank you for that.
I appreciate that, Tucker.